Hi Bulldogs, it's Mr. Griswold here, and today our focus of the video is to teach you how to write an effective essay. And to do that, we're going to start with your essay assignment for The Hole in My Life. Over here on this page, I have the essay assignment. It's always important to start by asking yourself, what is Mr. Griswold asking me to write about? So I wrote this nice paragraph at the top for you here, and it boils down to one essay prompt that you need to consider. So, let's look at this. At the beginning of the novel, Jack Gantos provides an epigraph, which is a quotation at the beginning of a novel setting up a theme from Oscar Wilde. I have learned this. It is not what one has done that is wrong, but what one becomes as a consequence of it. Your job is to write an essay in which you explore not only what Jack Gantos has done wrong, but what he becomes as a consequence of those actions. Basically, it comes down to finding examples of the mistakes Jack made in his life and what happened to him as a consequence, or what happened to him as a result of the mistakes that he made or the bad choices he made. I've given you some help here by telling you what I want in each paragraph. It's also important to note the requirements. We're looking for 2 to 3 pages. You're looking for 3 direct quotations from the novel. The formatting is here, which we'll go over in just a second. And that please, please, please reread your essay before you turn it in so there's not mistakes that you could have avoided. The due dates are here for you, but we'll talk more about that in class time. So let's go over to our blank page, the scary blank page. The first thing we need to do is set up our formatting. And on the assignment, I've told you exactly what you need to do. So now we got to figure out what buttons in Microsoft Word let us set up our paper in the right way. So first of all is the font type. The font type is the style of the font, how it appears in your paper. And what I'm looking for is the font called Times New Roman. If it's not already selected for you or not at the top of the list here, you'll scroll down alphabetical order all the way to the T's and choose Times New Roman. By the way, your Microsoft Word might look a little different from mine because I'm using a Mac, but all Microsoft Word is basically the same. After choosing the type of the font, then I choose the size. And always, always, always choose size 12. I was a high school student once, I was a college student once, so I know the difference between size 12 and size 12 and a half, or size 12 and size 13. So please don't try to pull one over on me, size 12. Once I've got my type set up, then I have to set up my line spacing. And I've said this, that we need to choose double spacing. So to do line spacing, you look for the button that has lines and arrows going in different directions. And if you hover over it, it'll say line spacing. You click that and choose the right distance between lines. I have you do double spacing, and you'll do double spacing from now until you die, because your teachers and your professors will want to be able to write comments in between the lines. And if it's not double spacing, then that doesn't give us the room to do that. Alright, so we're all ready to type. At this point, I want you to pause the video and answer the question I've asked about formatting. Alright, welcome back. Now that we've set up our formatting, we'll start typing our header. And your header should say your name first, followed by my name as the teacher, followed by the name of the class, Lit Comp 1, and then the date that it's due. And if I look back at the assignment, it's due on 10/17/2013. I skip a line, and then I make my font bold by clicking this B. Notice I'm not changing the size, I'm not centering the text. I'm keeping everything the same except for making the font bold and making a title. Now, I don't want to give away any good titles, so I'm at this point just going to write title to hold the place. You might do this well and come back to do your title later. What I don't want for a title is something like Hole in My Life Essay, because frankly, that's boring. I don't want boring. Be creative. Come up with a good title for your paper. After you write your title, you'll go right down to the next line. No additional line. Click the B again to get rid of the bold. You could also do Control B if you like your keyboard shortcuts, and that will let you type in a bold font. Okay, so we're ready to now start the actual meat of our paper. What is your essay going to be about? And one of the hardest things to do in writing is to write an introduction, because introductions are nerve-wracking. It's hard to set up your paper the right way to give your readers something enjoyable to look at. One method I like to think about for writing an introduction is a basic funnel, and I'm going to try and illustrate that for you here. Okay, I'm going to use a trapezoid instead of a triangle to give myself a little more room. An introduction might end up looking, I'm going to flip this around like this, where you start with really broad information at the top and then get down to more specific information at the end. Broad, general information, and then we narrow the focus, and then we have a specific, if I could spell it, specific thesis. Okay, 3 things in your introduction, and then you're good to go. Let me give you an example of that right below here. And so our text asks us to write about what, in this essay we're going to explore what Jack Gantos has done wrong and what are the consequences of those actions. Okay? So I want to start with a broad general statement, something along the lines of one of the best ways to move forward in life is to look back at mistakes. It's something that doesn't give away what my essay is going to be about, but maybe states a general theme, right? Learning from mistakes. That's a theme that is all around us. Okay? After I make this broad general statement, I'm going to narrow my focus into the book. Okay? So I'm going to do that by stating the name of the book, the name of the author, and giving a brief summary. And you're going to watch how clever I can be and do this in one sentence. Let's see if you could be as clever as I am. So I'm going to write, in Jack Gantos' memoir, and remember we underline our book titles. In Jack Gantos' memoir, Hole in My Life, Gantos describes his failures on his path to becoming a famous children's author. Basically, that's what the book is about. I might go into a little more detail, saying he spent a year or so in prison, that he smuggled drugs, that he tried to be an author earlier but couldn't. But this is a basic summary, and now it's narrowing my focus. So I've got one of the best ways to move forward in life is to look back at mistakes. In Jack Gantos' memoir, Hole in My Life, Gantos describes his failures on his path to becoming a famous children's author. Now I've got to get to my thesis statement. So I've got to think of some reasons why Gantos, or some of the mistakes that Gantos made, and we already know the end result, that he became a famous children's author. So I might go on to say, Gantos uses his examples, or I might even say Gantos, as a more accurate verb, writes about his mistakes of dropping out of school and smuggling drugs in order to show that even the worst mistakes can pave the way for a successful life. Okay? You'll notice my introduction is only 3 sentences long. The introduction does not need to be terribly detailed. It does not need to be an extended half a page of writing. It doesn't need to be a certain number of sentences. It needs to be however long you need to make it in order to effectively tell the reader what you are writing about. At this point, I'd like you to stop your video and answer the questions I've asked about writing an introduction. All right, welcome back again. Once we have written our introduction, and we got to make sure we indent our paragraphs, we then move on to writing our body paragraphs. And I'm never going to say you need 3 body paragraphs, you need 6 body paragraphs, you need 2 body paragraphs. You need as many body paragraphs as it takes to get your message across. Okay? I'm not going to go into too many specifics with this body paragraphs. I find this is a strength among my student writers, but I will just briefly state the structure of a body paragraph. So while the introduction is stated or shaped like a trapezoid, an upside down trapezoid, a body paragraph is shaped more just like a box. All right, so I'm going to draw a nice box for us here. And this box starts with a main idea or topic sentence. And in my essay, my first main idea is clearly going to be about dropping out of school. Then I have supporting ideas that follow it. Supporting ideas. And I probably want to shoot for 3 of them. And these supporting ideas can be quotes, they could be summaries of instances from the book, paraphrasing ideas from the book. That means putting ideas into your own words from the book. I do require that you have at least 3 direct quotations from the novel, so this would be a good chance for you to incorporate them. And then the last part of the body paragraph is the so what. Why should I care about those supporting details? And you'll repeat this for however many paragraphs you need. Typically, a good body paragraph is longer than an introductory paragraph because you just have more things to say, more information. You want to make sure you explain yourself fully, because if not, I'm going to be asking the question why, all over your paper, and that's not what you want. That means you haven't done a good job of thinking critically and explaining how Jack's mistakes, have had consequences in the future, both good and bad. Okay, you can explain both ways for us. So that would be our body paragraph. I don't think I'm going to write I'm not going to write an example for you because I don't want to take some of the ideas away from you and some of the quotations that you would look for in your own paper. Okay? At this point, pause the video and answer the questions about body paragraphs. All right, now we're on to our conclusion. So I'm going to go on to my second page here, because remember we need to have 2 to 3 pages of writing. And by the way, 2 pages does not mean 1 page and just a little paragraph at the top of the second one, because how would you like it if I promised you 2 pieces of pizza and gave you 1 full piece and just the crust of a second one? That's how I feel when you give me 1 page and just 1 paragraph on a second page. So 2 full pages, 2 full pieces of pizza. That's what I want from you. I'm making myself hungry over here. Let's look at the conclusion. While a introduction is an upside down trapezoid, a conclusion is going to be a right side up trapezoid. So I'm going to draw my shape again for you to look at, and then we could talk about what this is. An introduction starts with the same way a conclusion starts the same way your introduction ended, with your specific thesis. But instead of just writing that same thesis again, you are going to try and rephrase it, put a fresh spin on it. So I'm going to write a restated thesis. Then after the restated thesis, we have a summary of your arguments. So how did you prove your point? And to finish off our conclusion, or a good conclusion, you should have a super so what statement. Why should anybody care about anything that you said? Why is this so important? Why is this so important? I'm going to take you through an example of what I mean. So, if I look back up to my introduction, my thesis statement was Gantos writes about his mistakes of dropping out of school and smuggling drugs in order to show that even the worst mistakes can pave the way for a successful life. So the main ideas in there are Jack's two mistakes that I'm saying he made and his successful life afterwards. So working with that, I'm going to try and spin a new sentence out. And I might say something like, in his memoir, Gantos, if I spell his name right, Gantos shows that he only achieved success after learning from two major mistakes in his life. And I might summarize my major arguments. After dropping out of school by not attending college, Gantos quickly learned the value of an education in prison. However, he might not have learned that lesson had he not been caught smuggling drugs. And that's how they're connected. Right? One mistake builds on the other mistake to prove or to show Gantos the ultimate lesson. However, he might not have learned that lesson had he not been caught smuggling drugs. Back to the assignment page, I also want you to say, how does Gantos' story reflect some aspect of American culture? And that's going to be the super so what statement. Why does this matter? This matters because Gantos' story is not unique in American culture. He is another example that in America, individuals are forgiven of their past mistakes as long as they prove themselves valuable in society. Ganto, and I'm going to end there. I could say a little bit more, but you don't want to weaken your so what statement by closing it in, by having it hidden somewhere in your conclusion. You want that to be the last thing that your reader will think about. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement. So at this point, you should be ready to start writing your paper. Don't worry if an introduction doesn't come to you right away. Don't worry if that broad general information statement, that hook, doesn't get to you. You could always go back and add it. Typically, that's how I write. I don't write my introductions first, I write them last. So, lastly, you need to answer your questions about your conclusion and be ready to write your rough draft in class. All right, enjoy. Signing off, Mr. Griswold.